Hi, my name is Jeff Fastbinder with Align, and we've just saw the preview, but now we're going to get started on the actual build of the Trex450L Dominator. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to go ahead and clear up our workspace, and then we're going to start building the rotor head and the swash plate and move through the natural progression that is shown with your manual. So let's get started. Go ahead and get our work area going here. Put things we don't need at this point in time. Alright. Pull in my tools here that we'll need throughout the build. Alright, and let's see. I'm going to go ahead and open up the 450HZ bag here. We're going to get started, and this has some anaerobic in there. And let's see what else we have inside in here. Loctite, some screws, some linkers. There are a few tools in that same bag. There's some Allen wrenches and things like that. If you don't have some of these Allen wrenches, such as these from Align here, which you can find at your local retailer, we do have a few different types of Allen wrench sets, so depending on what your needs are, we've got various different sets, and also have the locking tool for working on your head and the spindle and so forth when you're doing some tightening, and I have a small ruler here for measuring when it becomes appropriate. Alright, so why don't I get tight on here so you can actually see this and see what I'm doing. So we're gonna get tighter on what I'm building, and that way you're able to see what I'm doing. Again, this is the Trex450L Dominator. Okay, getting started with the swash plate and rotor head. This is bag 450HH17. So we're gonna go ahead and open this up, and let's get the contents out here. And let's go ahead and start with the swash plate here. Pull out our Loctite. And what I'll do is I'll just open that up. We'll just get a little tiny bit on here. I'm just using the bag here, but another thing if you have around is like a bottle cap. You can pour out a little bit of your Loctite into the cap, and then you're able to apply your Loctite easily. So we'll just go ahead and put that on there. We'll wipe off any excess. That. This longer ball link here, I'll wait till we're actually doing the frame assembly when we have to put it into the anti-rotation guide. So I'm going to leave that loose for right now, so I'm not going to Loctite that at this time. But I'll do all the other balls here, put Loctite on them, and that underway. Okay, so that's the swash plate there. If you get any excess, get a cloth or something, just wipe that, you can just wipe it off. But that's the swash plate. And let's look at the rotor head here. Comes, as you see it here, the links, everything's put together. But before we move on, what we want to do is we want to grease the thrust bearings. Okay. Let's see. It's always good to have a second wrench here, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull out another wrench here. And as you can see, it's really loose. I mean, the washer just dropped out right there. We'll go ahead and pull this out. There's a spacer right here. Small spacer. And then I'll pull out the spindle. One dampener pulled out, which is fine for right at this moment. So on this grip here, let's work on this one. I'm going to go ahead and put this washer right here with this Allen screw. And what I'm going to do is I want to take out the thrust bearing here. So let me push that out with the spindle and pop right out. Here's the bearing. And then there is a small spacer between the bearing and the thrust bearing. So I'm going to get that out right now. Pull this out so you can see that. Slide that out. There we go. Wrench to do this. Seems to be, there it goes. Okay. Again, there's a small washer that goes on the face of the thrust bearing race here. Let me see. Pull out the rest of the thrust bearing here. Okay, the actual thrust bearings popped out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in even tighter here so you can see that a little closer. Okay. So the grip right now, what I've done is disassembled the rotor head here, and I'm pulling out the thrust bearing. We're going to need some grease. So let me get some of the Align grease that you can purchase at your local retailer. And we'll lube up the thrust bearing here, both the inside cup here. Should we fill those up? And then again, here's the thrust bearing that says out on the outside. I'm going to put that here. And then that washer I told you about, there's a washer there. And I'll put that through an Allen bolt. I'm going to set that right there. And then we're going to do the same on the other side here. So go ahead and put this dampener back on the rotor head. That came out when we pulled that out. And we're going to go ahead and take the thrust bearing spacer we'll put down here. And we'll do the same thing on this side. We're going to grease up that thrust bearing. Grease that up. And put some on the back side. Again, there's a spacer. Pull this apart. You have your radial bearing here. You have a small washer right here. Spacer between the radial and the thrust bearing. And then I'm just going to put some grease right here. Back side here. A cup. Push that back. And then what we'll do here, so I want to back this screw off really quickly. Let's see. I'm going to back this screw off the spindle. So I'm going to use our one-way wrench here. And we're going to pop this bolt here, Loctite it. We'll have to do the same for both sides, but while I have it off here, I'm going to go ahead and just take care of it. Go ahead and apply some Loctite. Again, I put it on a bag here. So you can do the same, just pour out some, or again, use like a bottle cap or a servo. If you have a servo tray or something like that, you can use that. And then just reapply that. Okay, flip your wrench over so you can tighten that down. Okay, and just so you can see, you want to make sure those pockets, each of these pockets, have a liberal amount of grease in them. I'm going to go ahead and grease the spindle as well. A little grease on the spindle. And then we're going to put this back together here. Put that through. And we're going to put those small, pretty small little washer here, a spacer. Put that right here. And then that grease applied, we're going to go ahead and push the spindle onto the rotor head. I get my wrench here. Just pushing the spindle through. Again, applying that small spacer. We'll stick that in there. And we're going to do the same on this side. We've lubed up the bearing there. And another thing you can do, if you want, is you can actually take your small wrench if you don't want to foul the threads or get any Loctite on your bearing, and just put it on the inside here, inside the spindle, on the threads. Get Loctite on the inside, wipe that off with your hand, just wipe it off, and then apply your grip. And let's put this back on, or inside the grip. Okay. I'll use my wrench here. I'm gonna get the radial bearing, stick that on, spacer, put that there. Then I'm going to apply the outer race of the thrust bearing, and ultimately the thrust bearing itself. So I'll go ahead and again make sure you have plenty on there. Helps a lot to the longevity of your bearings. And then you go ahead and slide that into the grip. Okay. Just push that down. Now that we have Loctite already applied, I don't have to worry about that. We'll go ahead and put our Allen wrench in here, this side, and then we'll tighten up the grip. And I'll tighten both sides. Alright, snug that down. And you're good there. Alright. Got another bag here. It's the main shaft. It's got a few nuts and bolts, things like that we'll need here. A little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to take off the pitch arms here from the grip because we need to Loctite those. There is a small washer right here, right there. So make sure you don't lose that washer there. Okay. And if the threads seem to have some lubrication on them, again, wipe off the excess. I know some people use alcohol or things like that. And you can do that if you choose to. I'm just going to wipe it clean. Okay. So put that there. And I'm going to do the same for the other side here. I'm going to take that off. And I'll again wipe off the excess oil here. So I'm wiping that off. Okay. We're doing the actual turnbuckle here that goes into the pitch link arm. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a part of a drill here. We're going to tighten this down just to grab onto the center of the turnbuckle, so that way it stabilizes it. And if you're like me and you have big hands with the smaller ball links, it's easy to thread these on. Don't overdo it. Put it on a real slow setting, and this will make it a lot easier to assemble these. Just go slow. Again, make sure you use a real slow setting. Get it started. You could finish it off by hand. I'm going to leave a little bit of slack there so I can adjust later on in the build. But the other reason why I do this is so that way when I'm assembling the actual pitch link arm, I'm not using the aluminum here to act as my brace for turning the thread. So I don't want to put a lot of force on that and then strip my threads. So in order to not do that, again, I'm using that drill here. I'm going to go ahead and put a little Loctite on the turnbuckle. Again, the side with the shoulder goes into the pitch link arm. Okay, so we'll just put that on and screw that in. And now that we have the link started, I know I'm not going to stress my link by trying to thread that in there. If you are going to do it, you know, with just like a pair of pliers or something, needle nose, make sure that you clamp the turnbuckle and don't use the pitch link arm as the support for when you're threading on the actual ball link. You're putting extra stress on your threads and you could actually damage them. So think about that when you're doing your build. But again, I'm going to go ahead and do this for this one here. And I'm going to pull this off. Push that in here on the drill. Again, have it at a real slow setting. Just go like that. Tighten that up a little bit. Get your ball link. And then we're just going to thread that on the turnbuckle. Again, I'm not going all the way down. I don't want it to bottom out. And there you have it. I mean, it's applied there. It's easy. And now I'm going to put, again, some Loctite on the turnbuckle. Put that on there. And now I haven't stressed the threads on the pitch link arm. So go ahead and turn that on, or turn that in I should say. And again, wipe any excess there. And if you look close, there is a slight gap here. Again, we'll tighten that up later as needed when we're doing our assembly. So we'll go ahead and put that aside. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and apply Loctite to the grip inside the hole. Again, I'm going to go ahead and just use my Loctite there. I'm going to stick that in there. Push that in. Another more precise way would be to use like a thumbtack. That way you could put it directly in there. Or if you have a very small wrench, you could apply it directly. And I'll show you. I'll just put a little dab here. And I'll put that in there. And I'll do it for the other side as well. And put a little dab inside there. Make sure the wrench isn't too large though, where you're actually hitting the threads. We don't want to damage the threads. Alright, now I've already wiped off the Allen bolt here on the pitch arm, and I'm going to go ahead and stick that right here. Put that in. And now I don't have Loctite possibly binding the bearing up if you were to just put that directly on the screw, and that way it's in the hole and that keeps this nice and free. Okay, so it's tight, but we don't have Loctite, you know, spilling over into the recess here. It's a real fine gap between the pitch arm and the actual grip. So we'll do the same on the other side. We already have the Loctite in place. And put that on, slide that in. Alright, so that's the rotor head part of it. Let's see. Alright, so we got our rotor head complete here. The only thing we need to do now on the rotor head is use those two bolts that are included with the bag with your main shaft. These go right here for the grips. We'll just put these on here. The rotor head is fully Loctited at this point, so it is complete. And I'm just going to insert these bolts. Again, these bolts come inside of the bag with your main shaft. Put that there. And now that you have your main shaft, again, the Align portion where it says Align is the lower part of the main shaft. Put that in on your swash plate. And that on your rotor head, and you're on your way. This is the rotor head assembly for the Trex450L Dominator. Alright, this is the second part of the build, and what we're going to start on is actually the frame assembly. This is bag 450H B21, and we're also going to need bags 450H B22. Okay, so we'll be utilizing these two bags to start the frame assembly process. So let's go ahead and get started and open this bag here. Alright, so you see there's various carbon plates that are included with this, as well as this foam. There's a foam pad here with a, looks like a double-sided back. And we have our frames left and right with the injection molding. This is part of the insert here for our battery tray. So it's a nice thing that's been carried over from the Trex 700E as well as the 600 EFL series. So I mean, this is something that we've integrated into the 450 package here. So let's look at that. And let's go ahead and open up our bag here, the B22. We have a battery tray, our latch, servo tray, the phase, anti-phasing, and then we also have bearing blocks, supports, and there's some more bearing blocks, servo support. There's quite a bit of things going on there. Let's go ahead and pull these out. Let's go ahead and get the bearing blocks here and pull these small screws off. I'm going to move some of this stuff over. We'll start with the bearing block. Small screws here are for the servo and the others are on the frame. Let's go and just pull these screws off here. Okay. You'll see the angles facing forward on the bearing block and the top of the bearing is facing up. Go ahead and get our screws ready here, get some Loctite. Start the frame process here. Just a little dab. Stick this in here. Okay, so as you can see that the rake is facing forward towards the front of the helicopter. So let's do the lower bearing block. Alright, same thing. Go ahead and prep a couple screws here. Okay. Hopefully you'll be able to see that clearly. Alright, so that's the main shaft bearing blocks there, and as you can see, the bearings facing outward, both top and bottom here. So bearings on top, bearings on top. So the bearings captured here. Alright, we can always check, make sure everything's running nice and smooth there. Our main shaft there. So, alright, let's get some of these carbon plates here that are included with the kit. He's basically keying right there. Use that. Alright, let's get the second side of the assembly here. And we'll go ahead and put that right there in that carbon plate. And let's prep these screws here. Once we get a screw on there, it'll hold in place. A little easier. Key that in, and we'll put the screw here. Okay, just get it a little snug. Don't tighten all the way just yet to get all the screws in place there. As you can see, it's really modular, so it should go together really fast for you at home. There we go. Loctite again. If you get too much, make sure you blot it out. Don't get carried away with the Loctite, especially on the small screws. Make sure we get that out of the way there. Tighten that up. Alright, there's the gist of the frame there, of our bearing blocks and so forth. And then down below here, this is where we're going to be mounting our Flybarless system. Let me pop that in the frame though so you can see. So this lower plate goes right in here, pops right in. And what you'll be doing is getting the 3GX out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount one of these foam double-sided tape here to that tray, and I'm going to mount that right now so that way I can see how it's going to fit with the lower tray. You want to make sure that the opening enables you to see your set button and the status light. So make sure you're looking at that. And again, your 3GX will be mounted inverted. So it'll be facing the bottom, your 3GX. The small logo on the front, where it looks like the front of a canopy on the helicopter, the G, is going to be facing forward on the helicopter, so it'll be facing this way. So we'll put that just to kind of get an idea, and then what I'm going to do is I'll look at this tray here, and what we're going to want to do is we want to be able to see that set button if possible, and we want to make sure that we can see, you know, of course, the pots there for adjustment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up this though. This is the lower tray that the landing gear bolts to, so we'll do that right now. So put that there. Let's open this bag. Get this so you can see. Alright. You'll notice that on the landing gear, these two pieces here, there is two with the longer screw and then one with the short. Short goes to the middle, that goes to the outside, and we're going to need to open up 22A, bag 22A, that has the washers for this lower landing gear assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. There's washers in there. We just need 2 for right now. So you can just pull out the 2 that you need. And then we'll put these on these longer screws here, which are 2.5 by 10. And we'll go ahead and insert those. And this goes right like that there. And what I'll do is add some Loctite here. Alright, make sure you hang on to that initially here. My washer, 2.5 by 10 screw. Push that up through. Get that plate mounted. And once you get that done, we'll do the rear end. Again, the washer applied. I'm gonna get some Loctite. And you can see it's going together really quick. I mean, you get your landing gear, base plate, your frame structure there. It's all going together pretty quickly. So I'm going to pull these screws off. Probably would be easier to pull them off prior to applying them, but I'm just going to pull them off so you can see. These are screws for the frame. We'll keep them in one spot here. And that's our lower frame structure. Go like that. Alright, the other thing you'll notice is that on the front here, you're going to have a shorter screw. You're going to have the socket head that's 2.5 by 5 millimeters. For the tail, or for the aft end of the helicopter, you're going to want to use the 10 millimeter, the 2.5 by 10 millimeter in length, and that's of course for your boom support. So just so you know, the longer screws go on the back end here. So we'll go ahead and put that on the frame like that. Before we actually apply the screws and everything on here, we want to get our 3GX. 3GX, again, we want to make sure that it's pointing towards the front. We're going to go ahead and put that on there's a pad in there. I put the double stick tape already. I'm going to stick that down. And before I put everything on here, I want to take a look at it and see where I need to mount my 3GX on that pad so I can have access to the set button. Okay? And basically what it looks like is on the rear end here, hopefully it doesn't fall off, but that way you can see, there's a small hole right here in the back end of the plate. It looks to be, to me, for a nice fit. You just want your 3GX flush with that, and that gives you access to the set button and the pots. So what I'm going to do for mounting, just so I know that it's mounting there correctly, I'm just going to put a small mark on the bottom of the frame with my X-Acto. I'm just going to put a little scrape so I can see that. And that's where I want my 3GX to line up with. I just made a small little mark there, no big deal. Let's go ahead and pull this up. Again, this is the included double-sided tape that's included with your 3GX. We'll just pull this up, put it in the center. Now I know where I want it, so that way, as far as the location, I'll be able to access the pots and the set button. And I just scribed a little scratch on the bottom of the frame. No one will ever see that. Alright, and then I'll double check it before I press down, seat it, just double check. And it looks like it's a good location for it there. So again, that hole right here, I'm basically making the 3GX flush with that. I scribed a small little line on the bottom of the frame here. So when I take this off, that's where that scribe line is basically right here at the edge of the 3GX. And that way, when you place it, you know where it needs to be. And yeah, you can save that other tape for another day. Alright, so that's pushed on there. Go ahead and apply this. Again, we're going to go ahead and get some Loctite on our screws. And to make it easier on ourselves, because we have that 3GX there, we're going to go ahead and apply the aluminum plate here, this cross brace. And let me Loctite that, put that on prior to closing up the frame. So we'll do that. I actually need one more washer out of that 22A bag. Okay. Alright. If you built any of the Align helicopters, I think you'll find this one goes together pretty rapidly here. Visually, the frame is nearly complete here. All I need to do now is I'm going to bolt up the those aluminum braces there that bolt on the lower base plate, and then you're going to have a frame structure that should be pretty solid. Right. Again, the shorter screws, shorter Allens of 2.5 by 5 will be used on the front, and the ones on the back will be the longer, the 10mm screws. So just so you know, when you're doing your assembly, use the shorter ones up front here. Okay. To the other side. One more short. It's here. Alright, and at this point I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up. Just give them a little cinch there. Alright, that's that. The rear ones on the aft end here, I'm not going to tighten these down. I'm not going to even Loctite these. These are those ones that are by 10. The 2.5 by 10s. I'm just going to start them, put them there so that way the screws are kind of out of the way. And also to center that lower aluminum brace so I can do the tightening here on the bottom. Alright, so that's complete. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to pull out the battery latch. Right here, this is the battery latch. Pull that up. It's a little latch right here, you just pull that up. Nice. And that clips into the frame. Again, I'm going to put my main shaft in here. Just make sure everything's nice and smooth. It's not binding at all. Okay. And then for the battery latch, we're going to use these 2.6 by 6 socket head screws. These are self-tapping, and again, those came out of that 22A bag. So if this is your first build, or you built a bunch of helicopters, I think you'll find that the helicopter build's really easy. The instructions are very straightforward. If you want to know where we're at right now, you go to page 7 and 8 of your instruction manual and take your time. I mean, there's really no need to rush. As far as assembly time, I mean, it's probably going to take 4 to 5 hours total assembly. Could be faster, could be slower, depending on how much building experience you have. But I think if you take your time, you'll really enjoy the build. That locks in right there. That's your battery latch. You pull that up, slide your battery out. Pretty slick. Align, our design team's done a great job of integrating the technology that we've had in our 700 and our 600 and incorporate that into the 450L here that you see. So right now, the frame assembly, what we have right now, we got our bearing blocks, battery latch, actually have our battery tongue there, and our 3GX mounted on the model. So, and now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out our motor mount for our 450. Pull the screws off of this so you can see what I'm doing here. This is the motor mount. Okay. I'm going to pull out these 2.5 by 6 mil screws for the motor mount, and I'm also going to go ahead and grab the pinion. The pinion's located in the 450 HZ23 bag. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the pinion out right now. Let's grab that. Looks like we need a grub screw. It's a 3 mil grub screw here, so we're going to grab that. Alright. So we have a 3 mil grub screw. Go ahead and get that on here. Get our motor. There is a actual cut on the motor here, the output shaft, and we'll go ahead and apply this. Okay. You notice I hadn't put any Loctite or anything on here. I'm going to leave this just snug for right now, so we can adjust the gear mesh later on when we are actually putting the gear train in place. So let's go ahead and get these screws on here for the motor. Okay, right now these are loose, so I can move the motor back and forth here on the motor mount. So I'm going to do that just for fit. Stick that in there. And then what I'm going to do is going to get these awesome little frame braces here. Say Align on them. A little Loctite. Okay, so let me pull this tongue out. So that's how it looks with those side frame stiffeners on there. We'll put those on the side of the frame. And we're going to go ahead and apply that. Okay, so that's the motor mount.